Who will be better for Middle East peace, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? This is a big question, and it's not a small question. We are down to the final hours of the most historic and high-stakes presidential campaign in my lifetime. I'm 57. I've never seen an election this close or this high stakes with such a stark contrast of the different values, the different experience sets, and the different policies between the Republican and the Democratic candidate. I've never seen it like this. I've never read about or studied, and you'd have to go back, I think, to Abraham Lincoln right before the Civil War to see such a sharp contrast in political philosophies, in morals and ideals, and so forth. But here in Israel and throughout the Middle East, the Sunni Arab world, and inside Iran, everybody is watching the American presidential race so closely because everybody realizes there is a huge difference between these two candidates. Let's begin with the actual numbers. So what's happened in the last month is really quite significant because let's dial back for a moment to the fact that President Biden drops out of the race, right? Huge political earthquake throughout the United States, but all over the region and all over the world. Biden did horribly in his presidential debate, the only presidential debate he did with former President Donald Trump. Trump just blew Biden away. Biden looked horrible, and the Democratic Party sort of went into shock and they freaked out. And they basically got Biden to get out of the race, put Kamala Harris in. Interesting that they call it the Democratic Party when they did not have a democratic process to choose Kamala Harris to be the nominee for the Democratic Party. But the media loved it. They were so, so-called mainstream media was so horrified that Biden was so weak, so infirm, so cognitively unable to handle himself in that debate, much less in the presidency, that they rejoiced and gave glowing, absolutely a stunningly glowing coverage of Kamala Harris at the Democratic Convention in Chicago, and then, of course, in the weeks that followed. So Kamala Harris, who had been seen in polling as not so likable, like her approval ratings were lower than her negatives. Okay, more Americans disapproved Kamala Harris, disliked her, disapproved of her as vice president, than approved of her and liked her until the convention, the Democratic convention. And then in the weeks that followed, what happened? She got such glowing coverage, and everybody in the Democratic establishment and almost everybody in the media gave her such glowing praise. They seemed so relieved that Biden was out that Harris's numbers grew and improved significantly, so that a month ago, Kamala Harris's approval rating was higher than her disapproval rating. Trump's numbers today are better than they've ever been, but he still is underwater. Overall, more Americans dislike and disapprove of Trump than approve and like him. A little bit less than a month ago, Harris was doing better. So everybody in Israel and everybody in the region thought, okay, so Kamala Harris is going to be the next president of the United States. She's going to be the next commander-in-chief. Maybe some were happy, but I will tell you, as we get into the policy disagreements between Harris and Trump in a moment, you're going to see that many people in this region got very, very worried. Okay, very, very worried. We're going to get to that in a moment. But let's stay with the momentum shift in the presidential campaign. This is why it's important when you look at polls to realize they're a snapshot in time. They don't tell you what's going to happen. They tell you what's happening right at the moment that the poll is taken, right? What happened over the last month is Donald Trump began to define his opponent, right? The media started looking a little bit more carefully at Kamala Harris, but more importantly than just negative ads by Trump and so forth, and the fact that all Republicans were trashing Kamala Harris. That's to be expected, right? That's the presidential campaign. What changed about a month ago is that Kamala Harris was feeling so confident, her team was feeling so confident in how well she was doing that she began to do interviews. They had kept her sheltered. Kamala Harris rarely gives interviews. She certainly rarely gave interviews during this last year of the presidential campaign. And in the first 4, 5, 6 weeks of her coronation at the Democratic Convention, she didn't do hardly any interviews at all. So she felt confident. She was thinking, okay, people love me, and the polls are with me, and I'm beating Trump nationally, and I'm beating Trump in all or most of the 7 battleground states, the key states by which this presidential campaign is going to be decided. Now, this is interesting because she felt good enough to go out and start talking in interviews. And that's when she began to do badly. The term word salad is the term that even Democrats are using. Democratic strategists, Democratic pollsters, mainstream media analysts are saying she is not doing well on these interviews. And when she doesn't have an answer, when she's not prepared for an answer, when she gets asked what she feels is a tough question, she dodges, she dissembles, she creates word salad. So you're like, what did she just say? Okay, and that's happened on issue after issue after issue, including on Middle East issues. So as she has stumbled and done poorly in a CNN town hall, for example, where she was asked directly, do you support Donald Trump on the concept of building a security wall between the United States and Mexico to keep out illegal immigrants? Anderson Cooper actually asked her, he noted to her, you have criticized Donald Trump for building the wall more than 50 times. But Anderson Cooper of CNN asked her, don't you support a bipartisan bill that you want to see passed that would include $650 million to build a border wall between the United States and Mexico to keep out illegal immigrants, including, of course, as you know, to keep not just general immigrants coming in that we don't know who they are, but also to keep Middle East terrorists out. And she got all squirrely. She didn't want to say that, yes, she does support that. She said she supports border security, and she says she never intended in her entire career to not support border security. But then Anderson Cooper said, but like 10 million people have come through the border on your watch. You've been the vice president. And he said that, and 50 times you criticized Trump for the border wall, but you support a bill that you just said it right now on the show, I'm paraphrasing, of course, that would provide $650 million to continue building and finish the border wall. And she got all defensive, and she created this word salad, and you could barely understand what she was saying. That's true of other things. She was asked directly by a voter in the CNN town hall meeting with Anderson Cooper, and Anderson Cooper followed up on the issue of, are you pro-Israel? Are you more pro-Israel than Trump? She wouldn't answer. She was asked by the woman voter, who's an undecided voter but leaning Democrat, what would you do differently than Trump to basically end the war in Gaza and the wars in the Middle East and bring peace and security? The woman was quite critical of Israel. Again, Kamala Harris's answer is incoherent. It's incoherent. If you really look at Kamala Harris's policies, she supported President Biden, who was saying to Prime Minister of Israel, Benjamin Netanyahu, don't go into Rafah. Don't send Israeli forces into Rafah. Netanyahu said, I want to go in. I have to go in to clear out the terrorists. It's the last city. It's the last stronghold of the Hamas terror organization. That's where the main leaders are hiding. Our hostages may be there. Biden said, don't do it. Harris said, don't do it. In fact, she famously said, look, I studied the maps. And there's no way that Israel can move, 1 million Palestinians safely out of Rafah and then send forces in. It can't happen. It's a disaster. Don't do it. Again, I'm paraphrasing, but go look it up. And what happened? Netanyahu didn't listen. He listened, to be fair. Netanyahu listened, but he disagreed with Biden and Harris. And he ordered Palestinians to move. The IDF showed exactly, drop leaflets and all that they do to tell the Palestinian civilians, here's exactly where to go. Here's where there'll be tents, and here's where there'll be food and water and medical supplies and so forth. And Israel was able to move the entire population, nearly the entire population of Rafah, out safely. And then the Israeli military moved in. And who did they find and who did they kill in Rafah? The demonic, wicked terror master of Hamas in Gaza, Yahya Sinwar. Rafah is the very city where Israel found and killed Yahya Sinwar, the head of Hamas. This is a big deal. Kamala Harris was wrong. She was dead wrong. She has no military experience. She has very little national security experience at all. She says, I'm always in the room, I'm always in the room. Well, she was also in the room when President Biden ordered all U.S. forces out of Afghanistan. Now, even his generals told him, don't do that. That's a mistake. You can draw down, but don't just pull all U.S. forces out, because what's going to happen? The democratically elected government in Afghanistan is not ready. They're not able, with the Afghan military, to fend off the radical Islamist terrorists known as the Taliban. Biden said on national television that the democratically elected government of Afghanistan would not collapse, that everything would be fine, and quit your worrying, effectively. Biden was wrong. Harris was wrong. And of course, Donald Trump says almost every day on the campaign trail that this was the most embarrassing moment in the modern history of the United States, when we withdrew from Afghanistan and allowed the government of Afghanistan to collapse, the Taliban to take over, $87 billion of American military equipment to remain behind, civilians left behind, the American military not even fully getting the equipment, much less the American citizens and our allies out of harm's way. That disaster in Afghanistan is what has caused people and governments all over the Middle East, not just in Israel, definitely in Israel, but all over the Middle East, to think, oh my gosh, Biden and Harris have no idea what they're doing. I mean, they may talk a good game. They may say they want peace and security in the Middle East, that they stand with Israel, that they'll support the Sunni Arabs, and that they want to make peace between Israel and the Arab world. But what do we see with our own eyes? We saw Biden and Harris make a catastrophic decision that was humiliating for the United States. And it was so bad that world dictators and evil leaders all over the region, all over the world, realized, oh my gosh, Biden and Harris, they're snowflakes. They have no idea what they're doing. So Vladimir Putin, the would-be czar of Russia, decided, look, I'm going to invade Ukraine. What are they going to do? Are they going to stop me? No, I don't think they're going to stop me. So Putin invades. Iran's leadership realizes, oh my gosh, if Biden and Harris are such snowflakes, if they can't even deal with the Taliban, we should order our terror forces in the region to invade Israel, to attack Israel from all sides. That's why we're in the horrific war that we've been in for about 390 days at this point, which is the invasion of Israel by Hamas terrorists on October 7th of last year, and then, of course, the attack starting the next day by Hezbollah from Lebanon, thousands and thousands and thousands of missiles raining down on Israel, and then the Iranian regime itself feeling so brazen, so unencumbered, unworried by the Biden-Harris team, that they've launched more than 500 ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and suicide drones at Israeli territory, Israeli civilians, just this year. So the world has seen this. The people of Israel have seen this. The American people have seen this. People all over the region have seen that Biden and Harris are not feared by our enemies, and they're not respected by America's allies. There was a recent Wall Street Journal poll that just came out a few days ago. Very, very interesting. We'll put the numbers up on the screen. Basically, Americans were asked, who do you think will do the best job? Not just a better job. Who will do the best job at dealing with these wars with Hamas and Hezbollah? Do you think former President Donald J. Trump will do a better job, or do you think Vice President Kamala Harris will do a better job? Now, in the Wall Street Journal poll, 49% of Americans said Donald Trump would do the better job. Why did they say that? And that's about a 14-point lead over Kamala Harris. For all the rhetoric, all the histrionic rhetoric of the Democratic Party, of Kamala Harris herself, saying that Trump is a fascist, that he's a Nazi, all of this. The American people can see with their own eyes the difference between the 4 years that Trump was in office, in which he stood with Israel. He moved the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem and declared Jerusalem as Israel's eternal capital. Every presidential candidate for 30 years had said they would move the U.S. Embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. None of them did it, except Trump. Trump tore up the crazy and insane Iran nuclear deal, imposed on the Iranian regime the maximum economic sanctions pressure campaign that brought the Iranian economy to its knees, and then brokered an Arab-Israeli peace deal. Not one, not two, not three, but four. This became known, of course, as the Abraham Accords. And compare that record, not a single invasion of any country in the world, not a single massive war, not in Europe, not in the Middle East. No evil dictator invaded another country during the 4 years of Donald Trump. Now, you may not like Trump's personality, you may not like every tweet, you may not like various elements of his character, but if you look at his performance as president, as Israelis are doing, as the Iranian people are doing, as Arabs are doing, and most importantly, as the American people are doing, they can see Trump was a peacemaker because he was strong. He projected strength. He rebuilt the American military. He wanted to make the American military strong again. He believes in peace through strength. Contrasted with Biden and Harris, who pulled the Jenga stick out of the game in Afghanistan, and the whole thing collapsed to the humiliation of the American people and the American military, and the tremendous sacrifice of blood, sweat, and treasure by American forces. It was all over under Biden and Harris in Afghanistan. And then, of course, the effective invitation of wicked leaders to start invading countries because Biden and Harris were perceived as so weak, as snowflakes, as it were, around the world. And Putin invaded Ukraine, Iran and its proxies started attacking Israel, and that's where we are. And how many peace treaties between Israel and the Arab world were made over the past 4 years? That would be zero. We've been hearing for 4 years, well, say 3 years, that Biden and Harris were going to bring about a peace treaty, a historic peace and normalization agreement between Israel and Saudi Arabia. Did it happen? It did not. Last point here, and it's interesting, and go back to the politics of this. Just a few days ago, in Dearborn Heights, Michigan, the Muslim mayor of Dearborn Heights, Michigan, which is a highly Arab and Muslim area in Michigan, which is a battleground state. It's a must-win state for the Democrats to hold the White House and so forth. The mayor, the Muslim mayor of Dearborn Heights, as well as about 20 Arab and Muslim clerics and leaders, endorsed not Kamala Harris. They endorsed Donald Trump. Why did they do that? Well, in their own words, they said, Donald Trump, yes, he's pro-Israel, we get that, but he knows how to make peace. He knows how to bring these wars to an end in the Middle East, and we're just getting chaos and disaster from Harris and Biden. Who's going to make peace in the Middle East? I personally believe that a massive, major, historic, transformational peace and normalization deal between Israel and the Saudis is right on the table. But Biden and Harris have not been able to get it done. If Donald Trump wins, I believe he will get it done. But more importantly, the vast majority of American people they believe, according to this new Wall Street Journal poll, that Trump is the best at reestablishing peace and security, not just for Israel and the Arab world, but for the United States in the Middle East. And it was like a 15-point gap between Trump and Harris. And I think that's it's one of many issues, the economy, immigration, inflation, crime. All these issues are causing American voters to shift. It's significant. It's not massive numbers, but it's significantly shifting. They're shifting away from the high that Harris was at a month ago, as they see that her incompetence, they see her word salads, they see that she doesn't know how to formulate sentences sometimes to give a clear answer, and that she's been bad on all these issues. You're seeing undecided voters shift. Jewish voters are shifting from Democrats to Republicans. Muslim voters, some, are shifting. Either they're not going to vote at all, or some are starting to shift towards Trump. Evangelicals, of course, we're going to see what our turnout is, but it's a very interesting moment. And I wanted to give you some additional analysis than what I've been able to do on the show, because there's been so much breaking news here in Israel. the Israeli attack on Iran. Who is preventing Israel from completely destroying Iran's nuclear program and taking out their oil refineries and decapitating the Iranian regime, even though Iran is entirely responsible for this entire war against Israel, and Iran just tried to assassinate Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu at his home in Caesarea? Who's responsible for this? Iran. And yet, who is trying to handcuff the Israeli government and the Israeli military from dealing decisively with the Iranian regime, taking out the Iranian regime and all of its military threat to Israel? Who's doing that? It's Harris and Biden. So the stakes are very high. I've already voted. My wife has voted. We made sure our entire family went out to vote when we were in Virginia just a few weeks ago. I encourage you to vote. Vote your values. If you love Israel, vote whom you think. I mean, so you now know the difference between Trump and Harris as I see it. There are things about Trump I'm not a big fan of. Things he said, things he's done. But you can see that I believe his record is a record of great accomplishment, and she is a disaster. So I encourage you, make your own decision, go look at the facts, and then go vote your values, vote your interests, and mobilize every person that you can, every family member, every friend, to vote, because we are in the final hours, and your vote matters. From Jerusalem, this is Joel Rosenberg with a YouTube exclusive for the Rosenberg Report. God bless you.